Hey, how's it going? It is political integrity news here. And without further ado, I wanted to showcase Trump's true policies. I say true policies because the media, that is the mainstream Democrat led media, and I say Democrat led media because this is the same media that was just a few months ago telling you that Kamala Harris is not it. They were questioning if Biden should even choose a different running mate for his VP and showcasing that she has the lowest approval rate and is now telling you she is the best thing since sliced bread. That media is trying to convince you that Trump's policies are Project 2025, which is far from the truth. Because, like, let's face it, if a person you're associated with at one point or another, but you're not associating with them currently, they're not part of your administration or life currently, they did something wrong. Are you held responsible for that? No. So we can't just say, oh, well, they were part of Trump's administration and now they have this disastrous plan that is not great for many Americans, but they're going to give Trump credit if they. No, that's not a thing. Like, yeah, they could say that all they want, but that doesn't mean it's Trump's true policies. So let's go over Trump's true policies, which if you see, this is his own website. And as far as I've seen, Harris has yet to put out her true policies, but let's go over Trump's. Okay, so you can see here the party platform, which I'll showcase just a tad bit after this, not all of it. So first, he wants to seal the border and stop migrant invasion. And from what they're discussing on this is not only making sure that the wall is completed, but by not using the parole powers of the president to basically fly immigrants over and kind of give them a free pass to be in the US for the president. So JD Vance and Trump are making the claim that instead of a bunch of people coming over, there's less coming over the border now because the current administration is going out there and allowing people to sign up and selecting so many people a month to fly them over as long as they meet certain requirements. The second one is carrying out the largest deportation operation in American history. So with that, it was asked if families would be separated. And to that point, many have pointed out, hey, if a person commits a murder or they go rob a bank and they're a couple, that is going to cause the parents, if they are of a child, to be separated from that child. So in stating that, if a person is here illegally and we are looking out for the best interest of the child, then to follow our laws, that may require some separation. But, I would hope for the sake of the family that the US does the best in making sure that a family is kept together when deporting them back to their home country, unless they did more than just cross the border illegally to be in this country. They're going to end inflation and make America affordable again. And by that, just keep in mind that Harris is vice president currently while we have all these inflation problems. And the only thing she has stated as far as helping against inflation, because they're trying to claim that corporations that provide our groceries and stuff, those corporations are making money hand over fist because they're not reducing the cost of major things that we would need, such as meat, dairy, all those things. They're not reducing the cost, even though inflation is not a big of an issue anymore, is what the current administration is saying. So Harris said that she will want to put a price cap on groceries, which, if you don't know, that is a communist policy. And just so we are aware of what potentially could happen. So you have items, and I mean, I'll just take Oreos, for example. They make many flavors of Oreos. The standard chocolate Oreo with the cream filling is there. Then they might make a mystery flavor. They have the birthday cake. They have the golden Oreo. Well, if you tell the company, Nabisco or whatever, that makes Oreos, that they now have to cap the price of Oreos. Let's say people like the birthday cake Oreo, but they don't like it as much as the regular Oreo. They put a price cap on all Oreos, but the regular original Oreo makes so much that it accounts for them to be able to make the birthday cake Oreo. Now, if you price cap them, they're barely making anything, and to them, it's not worth it to continue that birthday cake Oreo. Or let's make an example of a company that is making money off of something. So they're smaller company that is out here making things, whether they're making a new healthier option for pancake batter, they're making a healthier breakfast bar, and in comes the government and says, hey, you guys are categorized as this, so you must conform with the bigger companies in your bar only costing this much money. We deem that breakfast bars should only cost this. Well, now that breakfast bar has to reduce price when they're barely making anything compared to the larger companies, and then they go out of business. Like, that's what's potentially at stake, especially with that communist party's policy of price capping. Not only do you have that, but then you have lawmakers and companies working together more than what we've already suspected they could be. So they'll be donating and trying to influence the lawmakers in helping their company, and the government will basically try to control those companies even more than just having FDA regulations. So that is not a thing that we would like to have. So number 4 is going to be make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. So by that, we're looking for alternative energy sources, plus getting back to having a large reserve and not selling off our reserve in oil, and trying to reduce the price of gasoline and get our power plants up and running, and making sure that energy and everything people need to survive in the modern world with the energy we have. Stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. So this one is one that I feel is definitely something to look into being necessary. Because what happens if we start becoming only a online remote and military country? We no longer produce hardly anything in the USA other than food. So that means your jobs aren't producing as much of stuff. So why are we considered a dominant country economically? We might be dominant country when it comes to military, but then how are we funding the military if we're not a dominant country economically? So we need to get back to places that were great manufacturing places, such as Detroit. Like, look at Detroit. It's a Democrat ran city that is run down. You can look on the history of Google Earth Street Views and see that there were homes that were so beautiful. And then within less than 10 years, these homes were degraded, where in a few years, you see that the home looks unkept. Then you see that the home basically looks like a rundown, almost graffiti drug home. And then a few years later, usually there's just no home left on that lot in a 10-year time span. And that's because, like, they're not doing as much in areas like that. They're trying to move all this manufacturing overseas and cut all costs. And people in the area just aren't staying, and they can't afford the homes and the upkeep and everything. So they just leave. A large tax cut for workers and no tax on tips. So the large tax cut for workers, according to some people that worked at Costco, when they put in and gave tax cuts for the middle class, as well as tax cuts for corporations, workers said that they were notified that they got a raise besides saving money on taxes. And that when they were told they got a raise, Costco said it was directly related to the tax cuts. Basically, Costco got tax cuts, which gave them more profit and less to pay in taxes. So they did what it was supposed to be for, which is give employees more money. They went out and gave everyone raises, and then they put out that their minimum wage was going up from $12 an hour to $15 an hour at the time. So we have seen where companies have utilized it and it has worked. Now, that no tax on tips, Harris is doing it. And you can ask me if you want to see proof that the media is so biased on Trump, because Trump said the policy, and I saw an article saying how devastating it was going to be because the government wouldn't bring in as much money. And then I saw another article as soon as Harris started saying it about how great it was going to be for Americans. And the article was written from the same media outlet. Like, how? The same media company is talking about the same policy, but it is only bad when Trump does it, but it's great for Americans because Harris is doing it. Well, yes, it's great for Americans on both, no matter who does it. They're just trying to spin the story on how great it is because it's a Democrat versus a Republican. And then they want you to think, oh, well, it's bad because Trump's going to do it. Defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to bear arms. So this is key because at the Democrat convention, and I can even show a video and speak to this in more detail, but you have what's her name, Jen Psaki, the former White House press secretary. She is trying to push the same narrative because, you know, she was press secretary for Joe Biden and is definitely Democrat, that they're taking back freedom because they're the party of freedom, not the Republicans. Well, I could show you a video where Harris said that she is definitely for mandatory gun confiscation, which is against your rights, definitely not freedom. It was just put out from Mark Zuckerberg in response to Congress that they were pressured by the Biden administration to censor and suppress some news stories, and that the FBI apparently told them that stories that painted the Bidens in bad light, such as the Hunter Biden laptop story, were actually misinformation by Russia, only to find out it wasn't. But by then, the damage was already done because, according to Mark Zuckerberg, who, if you didn't know, is Democrat, donates Democrat, he told Congress upon receiving the news they wanted to fact check it, and that their policy at the time was to suppress the stories as misinformation until otherwise noted that it is not. And guess what? It took them past the election to confirm that the laptop was definitely Hunter's. So, does that sound like the party of freedom? Remember, this is the same party that started the KKK. This is the same party that Kamala Harris, and I could show you the video because it was at the 2020 first primary debate. Kamala Harris called out Joe Biden for being racist and supporting the racist policies, including segregation. So keep all of that in mind on the supposed which party is for freedom, because you only have one party that is calling for people to have freedom of speech, not hate speech, but freedom of speech. And remember, the Democrats and their Democrat led media, which you can always tell which ones are Democrat led media when they're saying the same keywords like energize, energetic at the DNC. All the media is saying the same keywords. I wonder where they got the keywords from. Maybe the Harris campaign gave them a lot of talking points, which means they're not really coming up and saying anything for themselves. They are literally just helping the campaign and trying to get Harris elected. So keep that in mind, because that party is also the party and media that is trying to tell you that Trump is racist and that he was saying there was good people on both sides. That's their whole spick. There was good people on both sides. They fail to tell you that he condemned the Nazis in the same quote and the racists in the same quote. They just like to stop it right there. And then when you point that out to Trump haters, they will tell you, well, he's just using word salad. He's racist, which is far from the truth. Like, there's been a few people that have spoke up and said Trump is not. And remember, Trump was friends with a lot of these powerful people when he was Democrat, and he wasn't almost going to win the 2016 election. Right before he was really running, and putting his all into the 2016 election. He was talking with people on The View, which I can show you that video. It's almost like a Man in the High Castle situation on the videos of that, because it looks like an alternate universe where they're so polite. They're saying many people want him to run for president, but his views are Republican, and it's known at the time that he would be, running Republican. But yet he's hugging them, kissing them on the cheek. They're cordial. They're not saying anything negative about him, and it seems like, maybe we would want him to run. Like, compared to now, and like Oprah's against him, and Oprah says she's independent. Yeah, don't buy it. When has Oprah supported a politician that was running for a high office that was Republican? Okay, moving on. Can't have this video too long. Prevent World War III. Restore peace in Europe and the Middle East, and build a great Iron Dome missile defense shield over our entire country. So let's speak to this. Prevent World War III. So if you didn't know, a lot of countries like Russia and China and North Korea, they've been in talks. Supposedly they've gotten together, and should the US get involved to the point that we're at war with one of them, that will essentially start World War III. The other countries are going to back each other because they're technically not our enemy, or not our friend. They're our enemy. So that means, like China, a lot of stuff gets manufactured in China. We go to war in China, what's that going to do to our economy? You're not going to probably be able to get anything because they're not going to ship anything over here. Restoring peace in Europe. So that's talking about the Ukraine and trying to stop the Ukraine war and doing it in the best possible way, because right now we're spending billions of dollars in funding that war and there's no end in sight. I am sure we can do more to just end that needless war, but also try to help the people in the country of Ukraine. I am darn sure. And in the Middle East, got Israel and Palestine, and like, I don't know which side. Like, I know Hamas is bad, definitely, but I've heard reports that Israel has done some not so great stuff against some innocents, whether they were intending it to be for Hamas or whatever the case may be. Like, that whole thing is a mess, and we need to bring peace there. Regardless of how you feel, we need to bring peace in that area. And at one point, yeah, we had peace. So we pulled out of Afghan, but before that, Trump negotiated, and there were no Americans getting hurt. We didn't have the Israel-Palestine war. We didn't have Ukraine invaded. Remember, Russia, they took over Crimea under Obama, and they did nothing under Trump. But yet Trump supposedly is in Putin's pocket as a puppet, when what did Russia really get away with? Like, yeah, Trump talks good about Putin. Oh, well, I believe the Russian government. Well, like, yeah, I'm going to say whatever when I know my enemies can hear me, because I'm talking about my enemies. It's what he says behind closed doors that aren't supposed to make it out in the public that really matters on those subjects. Is behind closed doors he listening to the people? And of course, his administration from the past, most of them are coming out saying they don't want to work with him. And that's here and there, but I look at it as it's a politics thing. Most people in the Republican Party never cared for Trump from the start. A lot of them, they still don't care for Trump. If you notice, there's a lot of litigation going around with charges against Trump. Some of the charges They can go after Pence for mishandling classified information. They can go after Biden for the same thing. They could have gone after Hillary for the same thing, but they didn't. Intent doesn't matter in these situations. It matters, like, the fact that it was done the same for all, and they didn't. And they're trying to say, well, Trump didn't want to give them up. That's why. Well, that doesn't matter to the law. The law is clear. They mishandled classified information. And Biden did it on numerous occasions, having stuff at his home in a garage, which had public people able to just break into his garage and take it. It was sitting next to a car. It was in an office that they weren't even using no more. So who knows who got a hold of that stuff? And then he apparently told a ghostwriter classified information. Like, that's far worse. All right. And the weaponization of government against the American people. So, Trump here is, I believe, referring to himself. And I think a lot of this is in that, like, PDF written up. But I believe he's referring to the fact that they're going against the American people. And he had also mentioned before that there were some people sitting in jail for January 6th that didn't do much but walk throughout the Capitol and kind of like take pictures and tour the Capitol, and that they may have been charged. That could also be, but we'd have to look into that one further. Stop the migrant crime epidemic, abolish the foreign drug cartels. I mean, that's clear. And that if you're not for this, then there's a problem. But the Democrats, they tend to let people come in, and they do a catcher and release system. Some of the ones they caught that are doing some of this stuff, they're locked up in detention centers. And Kamala Harris said she wants to get rid of detention centers. So that means detention centers that are not only just holding illegal immigrants, which can't be a lot because they supposedly have a catch and release program, and they're not trying to treat them as they broke the law. They're trying to treat them as they're refugees coming here for humanitarian reasons, even though they now have been telling them not to come, that we can't harbor. And Camilla Harris said it was a dangerous trek. She's trying to use word salad on the reasons why not to come, but basically our cities can't afford these people coming over. The cities are overrun and they can't afford it. You have places that are hotels getting paid to house illegal immigrants by the government, supposedly, where homeless people that are veterans are like, hey, I heard that you guys are helping out the homeless in need with food and a place to stay. And they're being turned away because they're an American citizen. They're not an illegal immigrant. Rebuild our cities include Washington, D.C., making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. That definitely is a thing. During 2020, the riots had people destroy in the name of BLM, which, I mean, I get it. You guys, like, people were upset, they were mad. But we don't need to destroy the city. You don't need to destroy the country. And then in Washington, D.C., which Washington, D.C. needs to invest in their infrastructure. They supposedly have some very bad tap water, and they have crime like other major cities. So we need to make them safe and clean and beautiful looking again. And so that's something that needs to be done. Strengthen, modernize our military, making it without question the strongest and the most powerful in the world. Now, granted, we are usually the strongest and most powerful in the world because we spend a lot of money. That's not to say there's another country that's going to come up with some crazy weapon that we don't know about, but we spend crazy amount of money. I don't remember if it's like 87 billion or more a year on the military and modernizing it. And this really hits home because it's not something Democrats do. Like now, Democrats are the war uh, party, but they're not the ones that are seeking out to send us to war. They're the country that is trying to send money to help other wars and allow wars to continue. Whereas Republicans have always been known as the ones quick to war, send us out to war and take care of stuff. But they're the ones that want to help the military because I am a veteran. I've been in the military and I've been told from one of the congressmen when there was an issue and I was out of the military, but I was working uh, in a position at the time where I was affected by continuing resolution where they didn't sign the spending bill and they kept just doing a continuing resolution to allow the government to stay open and funded. And if you do that for so long, the people on contracts and certain other positions, those can be cut until they get full funding. And part of the reason why they weren't doing full funding is the Democrats had majority rule, and the Democrats did not want to spend as much money on the military. They weren't even giving the military as much money as they wanted as they gave the year prior. So the military wasn't even going to get the same amount before. And that money gets dispersed all the way down to these lower level units. And so then you're telling a unit that may have gotten, I mean, let's just say, like $200,000 or something in spending. And that unit's told that they're now getting $150,000 this year. Well, these commanders already have ideas that they're probably getting at least as much as what they got last year. And now you're telling them with inflation, mind you, being at record high, they weren't going to get what they got last year. That's ridiculous. So the Republicans said no, because you know who gets the hurt for military not being funded as much? It's not going to be the equipment. It's not going to be, all the vehicles and anything of the sort, the weaponry or nothing of that. It's going to be the quality of life for the soldiers, the housing, all the amenities that the soldiers have access to, the shopping centers, the bases overseas where they have, shopping centers and different food places that are like some fast food and other little restaurants from here in America inside of that shopping center, the PX as it's called, depending on which base you're on. All those things. MWR events where they might offset the cost. Things that the soldiers enjoy and can provide, a little bit of joy for soldiers. Those would get reduced, if not gone, because they can't afford it. The unit's not going to sacrifice not upgrading their outdated computers and software stuff. He wants to keep the US dollar as the world reserve currency, which, yeah, we need to keep the dollar the strongest we could possibly do. That's given. Fight and protect for Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including no changes to the retirement age. And that is key. Now, I know he tried before to talk about cuts. That is a given. But He said he's not going to touch it again, but they will have to deal with it because, from my understanding, there's not enough left in what's Social Security, and I don't believe there's enough coming in to cover that, which is like very shocking. That I can't remember the figure. It could be 2033 or a little bit beyond that. It will be in dire straits if they don't figure something out, and that shouldn't include cuts or changes to the retirement age, because people would then get less money, or the retirement age would then go up in hopes to prolong and keep Social Security going as long as possible. He wants to cancel the electric vehicle mandate and cut costly and burdensome regulations. Now, that is key because if you're looking at what the Democrats want to do, especially the Democrats in California, they've been trying to get Biden to put in mandates, or even like make it to the point that it's extremely hard for these companies to produce a gas powered vehicle that will hit certain standards for EPA miles per gallon and things like that. So then they're hardly going to have any cars. Like, you won't have these powerful V8 cars no more. You won't have a powerful V6. You're going to have maybe a hybrid 4-cylinder car that is so economically efficient, but that would be all we have other than electric vehicles. And to try to get people into cars like that and electric vehicles, they've also stated that they would like the government to have a higher tax on fuel, which will cause people into an electric vehicle. It's ridiculous because, like, where are you getting an electric vehicle for $500 to $1,000 for the single mom that's barely making ends meet, working a McDonald's, Walmart job, whatever type lower paying job? How are they affording not even a Tesla, but like a Hyundai electric vehicle? There's no way. They're not selling for that cheap of a cost used. No. Cut federal funding for any schools pushing critical race theory, radical gender ideology, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, political content on our children. So some of this is but I mean, I get what they're saying for the most part. They don't want to teach various things of kids who aren't fully developed yet, that they should be able to change their identity and identify whatever. Like, it's cute when your kid pretends, oh, I'm a dog, I'm a cat. But, when it starts getting into gender things and they're a young kid and it's more than just make believe, like, they're really heavily leaning into it, but yet their brain's not developed, because we've seen it. There have been young teenagers that have transitioned, and now that they're in their mid 20s, they're regretting the decision. When you're taking hormones or hormone blockers, it is very, very difficult to go back to what you would have been. Like, you can't. The prime of when you would have had those hormones or not had such hormones, depending on the situation, like, you're out of all that. And I mean, yeah, we don't need to be pushing political content on children. We need to teach them about politics, teach them about the parties, teach them about history, how the government truly works, the electoral college and different things, what gerrymandering is, all that stuff. But we don't need to be teaching them that one party is bad versus the other, or any of the current things going on. We don't need to be teaching that. I let my kids just decide what they want to decide. I told them, do your thing. As you get older, have your own opinion. Okay. Keep men out of women's sports. So that's just a given. Like, regardless, they transitioned and are taking some blockers, testosterone blockers. They still, we don't have, I believe, enough data, scientific data, to prove otherwise, that they won't have some kind of competitive advantage. So, someone that is getting testosterone because they were born a male to not be playing in women's sports. Like, if you want to create a different uh different league for them to play in, that's fine. Create a league for transgender that has men who are now female and fully transition compete against each other. Perfectly fine. Support pro Hamas radicals and make our college campuses safe and patriotic again. Now, depending, I don't believe that if they are just protesters that are just trying to make their voices heard, that they should be deported. Granted, they're pro Hamas, but I've heard people that are talking on pro Palestine side, and they may not be exactly for what Hamas has done. So who knows? But unless they're breaking a whole bunch of laws or they're throwing money in helping Hamas or doing anything of that sort, uh, let them protest as long as they're doing it in a safe and legal manner. Secure our elections, including same day voting, voter identification, paper ballots, and proof of citizenship. So I like this. It's funny how back in the 90s and early 2000s, you had Democrats saying that voting machines can be tampered with and you wouldn't even know it. And that we should be doing paper ballots. But now, none of the sort. They're not saying anything. Granted, these voter machines, it makes the process a lot faster. But we need to make sure that people on both sides of the political party, no matter who you vote for, can trust in our elections. Because I can tell you this, in 2016, Democrats and their supporters did not trust in that election. They tried to call foul. They tried to say there was election interference by Russia. And then in 2020, it was Republicans and Trump. So both sides have done it. They've done it here in Georgia with Stacey Abrams. So we need to try to secure our elections and make laws so all elections are fair. Same day voting. There needs to be voter identification, so an ID. All states need to provide a free ID, not a driver's license, an ID that is free. Just bring your proof of citizenship, whether it is your social security card with your birth certificate, however they opt to do it. You prove you are who you say you are, and they give you the ID card that you can then use at places to say, hey, I'm 21, or hey, I'm a person that is a US citizen living here, I want to vote. Paper ballots? Yeah. I mean, like I said, both sides have once claimed that the voting machines, although probably much faster for the counting, can be hacked. Paper ballots could be the thing, as long as we're not going back to that hanging Chad situation. And then, proof of citizenship. And then unite our country by bringing it to new and record levels of success, which right now, I don't foresee any party, I don't see any person jumping into politics right now and uniting our country. The last time our country was united was during the tragedy of 9/11. Then they became kind of united in the cheering of Osama bin Laden being killed. But those were the things that they united against as a country. We haven't been united. We've had too much separation. And it's gotten to the point that even both sides fear, depending on where they live, having a sign supporting a politician or president. I mean, I've seen the Trump signs. I haven't seen many of the Harris signs, but you go on some social media and some people like to claim that they fear doing it because they don't want their stuff destroyed. Which I don't know if people are doing such a thing. I do know that there's countless videos that had people with Trump signs in their yard, and those were getting destroyed, taken, whatever. So it could go both ways, but it's pretty sad that you can be called racist or anything else of the sort, and people will hate on you to sometimes even assaulting you. People have assaulted Trump supporters, or at least a person that wore Trump supporting clothing to a Biden Harris rally this year. Videos on YouTube. You can look them up. And then the same person wore Biden Harris supporting clothing at a Trump rally. And they're joking and having a good time with people. Is that going to be the case with every rally? Who knows? But from the rallies they went to, it does seem like the Democrats are actually the haters, the racists, and everything else, because the Democrats have been the ones who use that language. Biden has used racist language even up until like last year, and during his presidency, he's used racist language. The Democrat supporters have even came out saying racist type language, especially about the Georgia elections when they put voter ID laws in place because they were trying to say those were racist and making claims that, you know, black people, they don't have their paperwork and records and things, or they're poor, or this and that. And it's like they're associating sometimes people being poor with a certain race and all this other stuff. And it's like, it's not. Nowhere does it say that they can't get the same stuff. And you can fill out generally online information to get things like a birth certificate, a social security card, anything you need. You can find ways to get all of that. It's not that difficult. So there is the 20 policies. Now this one goes more in depth. We have 16 pages. I'm not going to read everything, but turn to common sense. If you look, nowhere does this say Project 2025. It is not. But it does talk to the 20 policies, and then you can see that there's a table of contents talking about 10 of the major ones, which the seniors, to protect them, that's more than likely going into the Social Security and Medicare. Cultivate schools, which, from my understanding, Trump wants to send Department of Education back to the states. And he wants the states to be more responsible for it, because the states have a lot that they do. Because, like, you don't have standardized testing in the United States for every, like, state. They're not all the same. The test that you take in Georgia is not going to be the same test that you take in New York or in California for the grades. So he wants the states to be more involved in their education, which makes more sense because you have one government controlling and making better the education for a smaller amount of people. It's like giving a teacher 100 students instead of 20 to 30 students. Like, they're going to be overwhelmed and it's not going to be as great. Split it up and help the states in their agendas, so Department of Education can just be a fund. You can primarily get it down to a fund, maybe have a person that's kind of in charge to oversee things and help the states, but that's kind of how it should be. But, you know, like, there you go, folks. I mean, for the most part, don't already know, I generally agree with all this. I want to see Kamala Harris's policies. They're not out yet. There was a site, I don't know if it was created by the Trump campaign, from what it seems, or like a pro-Republican site, Heritage or something, but it was Kamala Harris's, was her, like, policies or whatever, according to the URL. But when you went to it, it was actually just a Trump ad talking about bad policies Kamala Harris has stated and that she'd be for, that many Americans wouldn't like. And then more recently, that changed and it now just redirects you to Trump. So it looks like they're taking full advantage of Kamala Harris not listing her policies. I've heard she's going to finally do an interview. So we'll see, and maybe do a recap of the interview to see all the key points, and if they ask her tough questions, or if they ask her, what's your favorite ice cream? Like, that's the famous one that, you know, Republican supporters tend to talk about Joe Biden with these softball questions they gave him. So here we are, almost an hour later, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed, and thank you for watching the long ass video. And I will see you guys on the next one.